In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
You have joined the Almost Unbelievable podcast with Cats and Ranty. I'm Cats. Hey there, Ranty.
I am Cats. How are you doing?
I'm doing extremely good. I'm looking forward to the podcast, as always. And should I give you my little bit of trivia now?
Oh, hang on. Wait a minute. On this particular one, I would prefer it if I gave you the trivia this time.
Okay. So the first story from Ranty. Okay, I will put myself on mute. I will sit back and I will listen.
Okay, well, as I'm doing this, I'm going to sort of just feel my way across it and ask you a couple of questions, basically. Have you heard of the Mandela Effect?
I have heard of the Mandela Effect, yes.
And how would you explain the Mandela Effect?
Do you mean explain it as in what the reason or the cause is, or how do I describe it?
Yeah, how would you describe it?
So I would describe the Mandela Effect as when something that you've always thought was true, or something you always thought happened in a particular way, something you got very vivid memories of, turns out not to be quite as you remembered it.
Yeah, essentially, Cats, you've got it right there. I'll give you that. Now then, have you heard of the Mingle Effect?
I have never heard of the Mingle Effect.
So in 1970, in Ohio, a huge amount of the population remember a guy called Joseph Mingle being apprehended for a crime. Now, since this time, it's now turned out that there was no guy called Joseph Mingle who was arrested in Ohio in 1970, and they've called this the Mingle Effect. Do you think that's a true story?
So it's like a version of the Mandela Effect, but about a particular individual. I know there are examples out there of the Mandela Effect, so I'm going to say yes. I do believe that is a true story.
Well, yes. In an alternate universe, it was a true story. So on the X-Files, season 11, episode 4, we had a guy called Reggie who came back and bumped into Mulder and Scully and told him of the Mingle Effect. So whilst they were talking about the Mandela Effect, he was calling it the Mingle Effect. And it was kind of like a semi-banter way of bringing in the same results for the same effect, but they just called it slightly differently. And I think that theme is exactly what we're trying to say when we're talking about the Mandela Effect. Would you agree?
Yeah, I quite like the irony of that, actually. That's quite good.
Okay, so now I'm going to test you. I'm going to send you some images on Skype for you to look at now. I've not sent you these before, have I? You haven't got anything in your inbox in Skype, have you, right now?
No, because I've got no friends, Ranty, nobody ever sends me anything, so this will be a first. Let me get my phone open.
Okay, right. So this is, obviously we have a YouTube channel, so when we release the podcast on YouTube, I will include these images in the podcast on YouTube. So if you're listening on Spotify or Google Podcasts or things like that, if you want to check us out on YouTube, we have a YouTube channel. It's just called Almost Unbelievable. Very sexy name there. Anyway, you can go and check it out, and the images will be up there. But in the meantime, we are going to test Cat with his own Mandela Effect and see whether or not any of these events have happened to him. Okay, so, Cat, you can confirm that you've now been sent some images, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first image that you have on screen, is it the Flintstones?
It is. It's a picture of, I forget what the main character's name was now, but yeah, it's the Flintstones.
And which of these two spellings would you say is the correct spelling for the Flintstones?
I would say it's the one on the left, the Flins, like Flynn Stones.
And you would be correct. So, in my case, I remember it being the Flintstones, and you remember it being the Flintstones. So I suppose I'll give you that one. There's no Mandela Effect for you personally in this particular image. Right, what's the next one you've got?
But there will be some listeners who remember it your way then, I assume, from what you're saying. Is this quite a well-known Mandela Effect?
Yeah, this is one of many that I've just had a quick research for before. And when I saw that one, I was like, hey, come on. It was the Flintstones. Wow. I remember it as being the Flintstones, not the Flintstones. But that's why there's a Mandela Effect, because some people remember things being different, I guess. Right, next image. Have you got the Monopoly Man?
I'm looking at the Monopoly Man now, yeah.
And which one would you say is the correct one?
So for those listening, there's a Monopoly Man. The difference between the two pictures is a Monopoly Man has a monocle in one picture and none in the other. And I'm going to say it's the one with the monocle is the correct one.
It's the correct one, which I remember, but apparently no, there was no monocle with the Monopoly Man. In fact, Monopoly Man never had a monocle.
Are you kidding? That is quite striking. I was more confident with that one than I was the other one.
Now, that's blown you away, and this is what the Mandela Effect does, because this is, as I say, a very well-known image that everyone seems to remember from being a kid, and they seem to remember it with the Monopoly Man having a monocle, but apparently not. Okay, let's go on to the next image. We have, is it C3PO?
That is C3PO.
And which one do you recall being the correct C3PO?
So, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for this, I don't know, I am a massive Star Wars geek. And I know that when he was given a red arm in The Force Awakens, it was kind of a nod to the fact that he had a different coloured leg in the original film. So I'm going to say it's the one with the silver leg.
And you would be right. Apparently, C3PO always had a silver leg. Again, I don't recall that, and I watched the Star Wars films when I was a kid, and I don't recall him having a different leg. I always seem to remember him being gold essentially all over, but it's what they tell us. They tell us that he had a silver leg. Is that how you actually recall it, or is it just because you were a geek?
Yeah, I was going to say that. I do not recall him I don't have a memory of him having the silver leg. In fact, I only found out he had a silver leg a couple of years ago when The Force Awakens came out, and I learned about that little Easter egg. So when did that come out? Force Awakens, 2015, something like that. So I was well into my late 30s before I even found out, and I've been a Star Wars fan all my life. So I guess really that I did suffer from the Mandela effect, and I did think he was gold all over.
Okay, let's go to the next image. Have you got a book in front of you?
I have Sex and the City book, yeah.
So which one would you recall it being the correct name? Sex in the City or Sex and the City?
I always thought it was Sex and the City.
And you would be correct. Apparently it was Sex and the City. However, I always remember it being Sex in the City, and so do a lot of other people too, who also recall it just being Sex in the City. But we're going to have it 2-2 now. It's definitely 2-2. You have 2 Mandela effects, and you've got 2 of them correct. Okay.
Oof.
Let's go to the next one. The Kit Kat. One of them has a hyphen between the kit and the cat, and one of them doesn't have a hyphen. Do you recall the hyphen?
I don't recall a hyphen, no.
Okay, well, you would be correct again. The non-hyphen. Yes. The non-hyphen is apparently how it's always been spelt. However, a lot of people remember it with a hyphen. Let's go to the next one. We have Wabbit. A Wabbit on screen. Can you tell us which is the correct spelling for Looney Tunes?
Now, so we've got Looney Tunes as in cartoons and Looney Tunes. Now, I'm going to be honest, I always remembered it as Looney Tunes. But now I look at it like that. It wouldn't surprise me if I was wrong because Tunes fits in with cartoons. But if I'm honest, I remember it as Looney Tunes, as in Tunes.
And again, you would be correct. I
would be correct.
Apparently, that is the true spelling of how it was always as a child. But I have to say, now I specifically remember this one as it being Toons, Toons. So, I don't know. I'm maybe experiencing more Mandela effect than you are.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, like a couple of those there, I definitely... I sort of guessed on the Flintstones one a little bit, if I'm honest. I could have gone the other way. I was totally fooled by the Monopoly one. The C3PO one, I did misremember until I just happened to learn it a couple of years ago. So, I don't know, that's pretty interesting. That was certainly not easy.
Well, there's just a very small segment of what is supposedly a very large batch of Mandela effects that people have said has been true or they've experienced it. So, if anybody wants to check that out, the Mandela effect, or if you want to call it the Mingle Effect, that's entirely up to you. Go and check it out and see whether or not you have been affected yourself. However, today's guest is a gentleman called Seth, and he has an incredible story because he actually believes that he's living in an alternate reality. He believes that he's actually transitioned from one realm into another. And although the people he knows and people he lives with and the people that are in his life know him, he barely has any recollection of them. How interesting. What do you think, Cass? Are you ready for this?
So here we have the man himself, it's Seth, and we're going to hear a little bit about him and why he thinks he might not be where he's supposed to be. Seth, take it away.
So, obviously, like you said, my name is Seth, and I'm 24. And 2 months ago, or roughly 2 months ago, I was almost in a car accident. And I think that in my memory, the accident didn't happen. It just almost happened. But I'm starting to think that an accident may have actually happened. So I'll just explain. I was going to turn onto a road and I stopped to make sure no other vehicles were coming, to make sure it was safe to turn. And there were no other vehicles coming my way. So I go to turn onto the road, and all of a sudden a car, which was exactly like mine, just a different color, appeared out of nowhere and almost hit me. And so they had to swerve to miss me, and it looked like they were kind of losing control of their car. So I stopped to make sure that they didn't actually wreck. And when I stopped, the car was nowhere to be seen. It was like it just came out of nowhere and disappeared just as fast as it appeared. And I just went about my day like normal after that. And then about a week later, I started noticing like weird things not adding up. So I feel like I'm lighter, and I don't know exactly how to explain that. It just feels like my body is lighter, but it also feels like this entire world or universe or whatever that I'm in now is much dimmer, much gloomier, not as bright, even on the sunniest days. And then I noticed that basically from the beginning, basically from the next day. But then weird things started happening and not adding up. Like, I specifically remember my friend Nicole getting married to this guy, and I always thought it was such a weird relationship, and I never pictured them getting married, but they did. And I know they did because I met her for lunch one day, and she invited me to the wedding, but I couldn't get off work, and I felt bad about it because I couldn't be there because we were really good friends. And I remember her showing me her wedding dress, telling me where she was going to get married. I remember what the cake looks like. I remember seeing pictures on like Facebook and Instagram. And so then I noticed recently on Facebook that she had changed her name back to her original last name. So I asked another friend, I was like, hey, what happened with Nicole? Like, why did she get divorced? And she was like, Nicole was never married. And I was like, what do you mean Nicole was never married? Like, I specifically remember her inviting me to the wedding. I remember the wedding photos. I remember it all. What do you mean? And she was like, no, Nicole never married the guy. They lived together. They were together for a long time, but they were never married. And so that was the first thing where I was like, whoa, that doesn't make sense. Like, why do I remember this happening, but it hasn't happened? And then, let's see, my little sister has a boyfriend, and I don't remember meeting him until they were dating. However, my entire family and my sister's boyfriend knew each other before that. And he has memories of me from when we were like younger, like 13, 14 years old. And he has like tons of memories, not just like one or two. He has like tons of memories with me, but I have none. I don't remember him at all whatsoever. And even my family is a little confused on why I don't remember it, because they do, and they know that I was there for it, but I have no recollection of it at all. Like, I didn't meet him until probably, I don't know, maybe almost 2 months ago as well. And so after that, I was talking to my friend Cheyenne. So I have these two really good friends. One is Cheyenne, one is Ashley. And they are different social circles, different social groups. So they never would have hung out in like high school or anything like that. So the only reason they know each other is because of me. And Cheyenne was telling me about this time that me, her, and Ashley had hung out, and how we had like made cheesecake and just like watched all these like dumb shows and like sang karaoke and just like basically spent like an entire day and entire night together. But I have no memory of it whatsoever. And I thought, honestly, that she was joking. Like, I didn't think she was being serious at all. And so I called Ashley and I was like, hey, this is what Cheyenne is telling me. Is this true? Did this happen? Because if it did, I don't remember it. And she was like, yeah, that did happen. It's absolutely true. And I don't understand why you don't remember it. Because there was something that happened that day. Like, I think she locked herself out of her house and we basically had to break into her own house to get back into it because she lived alone. And she was like, I don't know how you don't remember that. And I was like, I have no memory whatsoever. And so she has pictures and she doesn't live near me anymore. But she's supposed to mail me some pictures from that day to see if I will remember. But I have no memory of it. And I don't know how I would have forgotten that. And then my relationship with my boyfriend from the beginning, we've been together almost 5 years. And it's always been so good. It's like we have issues like every other couple, like small arguments or whatever, but nothing serious. It's always been a really good relationship. He's always been very nice, very sweet, very affectionate. And literally, I go to bed with everything normal in this relationship. And then I wake up the next morning to him being very cold, very distant, very hateful, very rude. And I've even asked him, like, what's wrong? Is there something going on? And it's like he's confused. It's almost like he doesn't understand why I'm asking, because to him, this is normal. This is how it's always been. But to me, this is like a complete opposite of how things used to be. And so I have no answer for that either. And then just like small little inconsistencies in like song lyrics. Like I remember specific songs going a specific way, and then now they're completely different. When it's songs that I've listened to tons of times, more than any person should, and I know the song by heart, but now all of a sudden I'm singing along to it, and I'm singing the lyrics I remember, but the lyrics I'm hearing are completely different. And that about sums up where I'm at now.
Wow. So did all these changes, I'm getting the impression they all sort of like happened instantly, or did they seem to change over, like what was the time period involved?
So it's over the time period of 2 months. So over the time period of when I almost got into the car accident until now. The very next day was when I noticed things seemed to be more dim and I felt lighter. And then it was just like one thing after another, kind of leading up to my Reddit post, because at that point I was like, small things or one or two things I could shrug off, but because it keeps happening, it's like, it's very concerning at this point. But it all happened within the time frame of the last 2 months.
All right. So almost on a daily basis, you're saying things are just slowly becoming more different.
Yeah.
So go back to the wedding. You said you remember being invited to the wedding. You remember seeing the photographs, etc. Did you accept that wedding invite?
I wanted to, but I could not get off of work, so I had to miss it. But they did do like a live stream on Facebook, and I remember sitting at work watching the live stream happen.
And have you tried to go onto Facebook and see if that post, I'm assuming it doesn't exist now, but like have you gone on and tried to have a look to see if you can find that?
Oh yeah, I've scrolled through all of her pictures. I've scrolled all the way back to when I remember it happening. I've looked on her Instagram, and there's no history of it whatsoever.
Wow, fascinating. And if we talk about the wider world, if you like, so you've told me a lot of things that are close to home that have changed for you, but on like a worldwide scale in terms of like politics or, the news or something, is there anything like that that's just become different for you?
Where I am now, like in this universe or whatever you'd like to call it, things seem to be a bit more calm. Like obviously coronavirus is still happening. We're still in the middle of a pandemic. Like there's still tons of things going on with the presidency and things like that. But in my previous world, things were a lot more hectic. People were taking coronavirus a lot more seriously. Things were just more violent and more hateful. And it just seems to be so much more calm here. Like there's still problems, but it doesn't seem to be as serious of an issue.
When you say more calm, do you mean that you remember, I don't know, riots or just more aggression in the way people were dealing with each other?
Both.
Right. Okay. So the Capitol Hill riot, for example, did you experience that in your own reality or your old reality?
I'm pretty sure I experienced that in this new reality.
Right. Okay. So I'd be interested to compare sort of the two. So have you got an example of a real world event that did play out differently? You know, like any details you can give us, or is it all just sort of the interpretation of the body language and the anger? Is there anything specific you can say? Well, you know, this Black Lives Matter march, for example, you know, somebody was murdered or whatever.
Not that I have noticed. So far, I haven't really looked at like past events or even things that are currently happening other than things that I catch from scrolling on social media. It's mostly the things that I'm noticing like in my personal day-to-day life, because when I started realizing this and started realizing that something wasn't right, it honestly freaked me out. Like it's very scary. So as much as I want to look for other things that are different, I'm also kind of scared to find other things that are different.
Okay, so let's do some housekeeping. So you've started by saying that you thought in the other reality you were about to be involved in a car accident. Can you tell me what your car is like currently in this reality?
No, in this reality, my car is completely fine.
Okay, so you've also explained how in the other reality, let's say, you were absolutely sure that you were going to get hit by this car. Can you just run us through what actually happened again? Just tell us that story just one more time, please.
Yes. Like I said, when I went to turn, I didn't see a car coming at all. But then when I was turning and noticed the car was so close to me that I literally braced myself for it to hit me, because I was like, there's no way this car is going to miss me. It was just way too close.
Okay, so moving on a little bit, we're going to ask about the relationship that you have with your friends and your family. Okay, so I believe that you think that things are different from your perspective. But would you say that there was things that your friends and family aren't happy with about you? Have things changed to a point where they don't seem to recognize you? What's the story there?
I've not had anybody say there's something happening that they're not happy about, but I have had my two really good friends that I talk to daily tell me that something seems different, but they're not quite sure what. They say that something feels off, something's just like weird or strange, and that they get like a weird vibe or like energy from me that they've never felt before, but they can't quite figure out why or what it is.
Okay, so if we were going to ask for a rational explanation here, if you were going to put yourself in Katz's position and pretend that you're the scientist in all of this, do you have any explanation as to what you feel is going on?
I don't have one. I'm so confused. It's so confusing to the point to where I've sat down and like questioned, did I go to another universe, or am I just losing my mind? And I am convinced that I did go to another universe. Like, I don't think that I'm crazy. I don't think I'm losing my mind, but I have no answers for what's happening or how it's happening or why it's happening. It's just so confusing. Like, every time I think about it, my brain just feels like it's fried.
So your relationship with your boyfriend, is it possible that you could tell us a little bit more about that? Could you perhaps go into a little bit of detail about what you think is different about him and what's different about your relationship?
So we've always been very, very close. Since the beginning, since we met, we've always been very close. We clicked instantly, and it's just been that way since. And here we are almost 5 years later. He's always very like, when we're in the car, holding my hand. When we go to sleep, we sleep like very close, just like very affectionate, constantly saying, I love you, things like that. And now, I couldn't tell you the last time he held my hand. I couldn't tell you the last time he told me he loved me. When we go to sleep, there's like a ton of space in between us. There's no affection at all. Sometimes we will be in the same room, and we used to talk like constantly all the time, just like constantly talking. And now we'll sit in the same room for hours and he won't even say a word. It's like, I know that he's my boyfriend. I know who he is and his energy and he just feels so familiar. but I feel like something with him is off in the same way that people feel like something with me is off.
So, in the pre-show, before we started this recording, you told me that you had a tattoo on your arm. In actual fact, you're pretty much of a music buff, let's say. And there was songs and lyrics and things like that that you seem to recall differently in this reality from the reality that you came from. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so there's the song, it's called Forever is a Long Time, and it's by Halsey. And I remember the lyric being, because I could never hold a perfect thing and not destroy it. But now the lyric is, because I could never hold a perfect thing and not demolish it. And I know those words can kind of be interchangeable, and it is just one word difference, but I really remember it being that way. And I was singing along to the song in the car one day, and it got to that part, and I said destroy, but she said demolish, and I was like, wait, hold on a second, what? And then I kept skipping it back and kept skipping it back, like literally 30 times, because I was so confused. And my boyfriend was like, what are you doing? And I was like, this song is different. And he is convinced that it was always demolish instead of destroy, but I know that it for sure was destroy.
I'm interested, if you're noticing differences in people around you, have the people around you started to say that you are different?
Yeah. Other than my two friends saying that my vibe and my energy is off, even my parents are starting to be like, they're constantly asking me if I'm okay, or they're constantly asking me if something is wrong, because they just feel like something's off, and they're also not understanding what it is or why. And I have no answer for them. And I haven't really told them my theory about what happened. And also my brother and my sister, they have both at different times said to me, you just seem different. Like, are you okay? Is something wrong? You just seem different. And they can't really explain how or like what's different. It's just a feeling they have.
So I have a feeling that this almost car accident, let's say, has a profound effect of what's gone on since. Now, whether or not we can nail it down to an event that maybe had some kind of psychological effect on you, or whether or not, which I may look into later, is something to do with obviously having perhaps died in one reality and been shifted into another. I mean, that's possible because, you know, what you're telling me here, it sounds quite bizarre. I mean, it is bizarre. I mean, the recollection of a car coming towards you and for sure was about to impact you, and then when you brake, it's no longer there. It's like waking up from a bad dream. You're just about to have an accident in a bad dream, and you wake up, you shake yourself out of that reality, because in your sleep you are in a different reality to all intents and purposes. So I'm wondering if that has some bearing on this, whether or not it was some physical jump or whether it was some psychological jump.
That is very, very interesting. And a lot of people on Reddit, the car thing has stuck in my mind, and I didn't know why it was like sticking in my head as something so important, because I'm sure we've all had like almost car accidents before, you know, like it happens. But it was something that just stayed in my mind all the time, and I didn't really know why until I posted on Reddit. And a lot of people are theorizing that if you die in one dimension, your consciousness just moves to the next closest one. And I was like, oh, that would make sense. Maybe I did actually get into an accident. Maybe I died, and that's how I'm here.
Reminds me of the film Dead End. I don't know if you've ever seen Dead End. That's a very good film. But I can't tell you too much about it because I'll spoil the ending. But it reminds me of that. So what I was going to ask before was, if you're generally now thinking, yeah, this isn't where I belong, I'm somewhere else, that must mean that all the people around you aren't the original people, that, you know, your family aren't your original family, etc. How much does that play on your mind?
A lot. Because it's like, I know that they're my family. Like, I know my parents are my parents and my siblings are my siblings, but, you know, everybody around me feels off. And so while they're still here and I know who they are, it feels like at the same time I don't know them. It feels like they're not who I'm used to. So while it's comforting that they're still here and they're familiar, it's also sad, and I miss my actual family and my actual friends and the people that I actually know instead of this new version of them.
So, when you look at some of these pictures, let's say, on Facebook, are you looking at yourself in these Facebook pictures and thinking to yourself, yes, yeah, that's definitely me? And are you also thinking, yeah, I can recall that, I can recall being in that place at that time, and I can recall that happening?
Not really, but I have looked at them and been like, that kind of doesn't look like me. Like, it's me and I can tell that it's me, but there's something slightly off about my face that seems slightly off, and I can't really figure out what it is.
Well, I'm sort of out of questions now. It's going to be a stumper.
It sure is, Cats. It sure is going to be a stumper. So do you have any thoughts about being able to go back? Do you think it's possible for you to go back?
I was very hopeful that was possible or that it could happen, but the people on Reddit are just telling me that it's just not going to happen. I'm stuck here.
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give you, which is non-story related basically, is just to go away and enjoy your life, and whatever that entails, make the best of it. You know, just accept that you're here, wherever that is, and accept that the chances of you going back are probably slim to none, and just get on with things. Just put the past behind you and move on and try and live the best life that you possibly can.
Yeah, I'm slowly coming to terms with the fact that I'm going to just have to accept things for how they are and just go with it, because really, what can I do? There's nothing that I can do about it. I'm here, so if I'm stuck here, then I have to make it work somehow.
Well, I think making it work is going to be the hardest part. You know, that's going to take a lot to get over from what you've told me. But, you know, I mean, the only way to do it is to just go out and try. That's the only advice I can give you.
That's a good point, and I do need to look at it that way instead of being stuck on my old reality. I think I need to not forget it, but just move past it, because at least for the time being, I'm not going to be able to get back to it.
Yeah, certainly. Good luck with all of that. I hope you get some resolution with it. And thanks for sharing the story with us.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to share it.
It's been our pleasure.
Anytime. You're always welcome back on. Always welcome back on. If you've got any other stories, you're always welcome back on.
Well, thank you so much.
When do you think this podcast will be out, Auntie?
Well, I hope to have it out within the next 2 weeks. That's my hope.
Okay, well, I'll definitely be looking for it. I'm excited to hear it.
Brilliant.
You all enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for listening.
You too, mate, and thank you for coming on. See you later, bud.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much, Seth. Thank you for that astonishing story. We're going to take a little break away now and discuss it between ourselves and see whether or not we can figure out what's going on and see whether or not Cats can science his way out of this. But before we get there, there's 2 more images that I want you to look at, Cats.
All right, cool. Let's have a look.
You thought you'd got away with that, but I sent you 2 additional images that I want you to look at. So can you tell me if you're looking at Forrest Gump?
Yeah, got that right in front of me.
Okay, so what would you say about the saying that actually says, life is like a box of chocolates?
So the following line, life is like a box of chocolates, you never quite know what you're going to get?
Correct. Is that how you recall it?
It is, yeah. I've only seen the film once, though, so I may very well be wrong.
Well, apparently the film is known to have said, life was like a box of chocolates. Was like a box of chocolates. Not is like a box of chocolates.
Now, that see, I've never heard anybody repeat it like that. I'd have been sure that it was life is like a box of chocolates. Yeah, got me on that one, 100%.
Okay, and the very last image I want you to look at, tell me, have you got Snow White up?
I certainly have.
And can you tell me, do you recall the saying, mirror, mirror on the wall?
Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?
Correct. Is that how you recall the saying is going?
No, that is how I recall it, but only because I don't know much about these, but we did go to a Christmas pantomime. Obviously not last Christmas, but the Christmas before, and it was a Snow White one. And I must have heard that line about 50 times in that pantomime. So I'm remembering the pantomime rather than the cartoon.
So, what would you do if I was to turn around and tell you that the actual saying that's always been said in every Snow White film is magic mirror on the wall?
No way! My God, yeah. No, I that's got me 100%. Yeah, 100%. That's got me. I never would have thought that was the bit that was wrong. Never.
Well, there you go. That's the Mandela effect.
Awesome.
Right.
Finally.
Moving on. Right. Let's get into this. Let's have a little chat about what we actually thought about this particular story and Seth's change of reality. How did you feel his story was? Have you got anything to add scientifically about what you actually think went on here?
Well, first of all, I think Seth was a fantastic bloke, and I really wish him all the well, because it sounds as though he's going through quite a tough period, doesn't it? It sounds as though he's finding things quite stressful and difficult. And I hope his relationship sorts itself out, etc. For me, I think therein lies the problem and the answer to the story. I think that whatever has triggered a stressful period in his life that seems to be snowballing has caused some sort of chronic stress effect. And if you just even Google, I think some of the questions you ask yourself if you're suffering from chronic stress, one of them is, does it always feel as if you're worrying about something? Does it feel as if you're disconnected from people around you? Does it feel as if everything suddenly feels, or does it seem as if everything suddenly feels different to how it used to, etc.? And I know that Seth, he mentioned his partner quite a number of times and how upsetting it was that things weren't perhaps as they used to be in his relationship with his partner. And I'm just wondering whether worrying about this day in, day out, has caused some kind of chronic stress that maybe he's interpreting as being something else. So I hope I'm wrong, and I do wish him all the best, but that's what I'm going to say.
I am so torn with this one. I really am so torn, because it seems to me that there are so many different issues in this that just couldn't be explained away with some kind of stress forgetfulness. I mean, particularly the fact that his friend got married and he remembers seeing. I mean, this is different, you see. If you're going to forget something, you're going to forget it completely. You're not going to replace it with other memories. Now, he's been replacing the forgetfulness with other memories, as in he remembered his friend getting married. He remembers seeing the wedding on Facebook, the pictures. He remembers the cake that the dress that the lady wore. This is not forgetting things. This is having different memories from a different time. And this is why I'm leaning more to maybe something's happened to him. Because this isn't the only case of somebody coming on the show and telling us that things have changed in their reality. There are other guests that have come in and spoken about things being changed and having stepped into what they consider being a different parallel universe or a different world. And Seth is no different, except his seems to be more prolonged, for sure. I mean, this has been going on for several months now. And, everything he seems to recollect, everything from the relationship with his boyfriend, being one way, he recalls it being one way. And then since this event, and I'm going to go back to the original event, the triggering event, where he pulled out of a lay-by, let's say, or a side road to go onto a main road, and he saw a car coming towards him. There was no way he could avoid the car, and he braced for an impact, and then nothing happened. Next thing, he looks around, there's no car to be seen. So did something happen? Was he actually impacted with a car? Did the car actually strike him? Did he actually perhaps die in one universe and get pushed into another? Who knows? I mean, this is total out there thinking out of the box. But something I believe happened at that time. And we don't have all the explanations here. We don't know half the stuff. We don't even know where we go after death. We don't even know if there is a life after death. Nobody knows any of this stuff. So the limits of where this could go could be astronomical. There could be so many different things that we haven't even thought about in the physical world that, we've never even thought about what happens to our spirit. And is it possible that he jumped from one realm into another? quite possibly. I mean, to recall that the car was going to impact him and then suddenly it didn't, and suddenly it's nowhere to be seen. And then his life from that moment, everything seems to have changed. Knowing, a friend of his from school, all the way up to being the age he is now, apparently he's known this guy his entire life. He doesn't remember him, though. The other guys remember him. His sister says that he remembers him. His family say he remember him, but he doesn't remember him. This is all very strange, this selective memory loss, let's say, and it is definitely selective, but it would be more indicative of definitely been jumped into a different reality, because in that case, you might have experienced things slightly different. You might have taken a left road instead of a right, which meant that you never actually met that person to have this friendship and relationship with. But in that reality, you did. And when you swap bodies, the rest of everything that you've known, the people you know in your life, the job that you had, the car that you drove, all of that stays the same. But the person that you would have met had you turned left instead of right, you never got to meet that person. And I feel there's something to this. Can I prove it? No, of course we can't. But I will definitely double down with what you said there, Katz, and hope that he now addresses the fact that he is in this situation. He can't change it, and there's nothing that he can do about it. There's no point stressing over it. There's no point getting all irate about it. He's got to just move on, accept that he is where he is now, and make the best of it. Instead of turning it into a negative and wishing that he could always go back to the reality that he came from, or where he believes he came from, he can now just essentially say to himself, look, I am here. I've got to deal with it. I'm going to make the best of this now. This might be something good for me to actually do. So that's all I can say about that. And I know I've seemed to have waffled a lot about it, but it was a great story that needed quite a long response from me, I believe.
No, that's great. And you did remind me of a brilliant film with the comment about did he actually die and that moved him somewhere else. If anybody, I quite like to shout out random horror films and supernatural films here, but if anyone's seen the film Dead End, that's a very good film where I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to spoil it, but it did resonate what you said there with my memory of that film Dead End. It's well worth a watch for those who've not seen it.
Perfect. Right. Okay. Well, that's another one wrapped up, Caps. I'm going to make sure that I definitely get all those images loaded up onto the YouTube podcast that we have going here as well. So, as I say, if you have not subscribed to us on YouTube, I highly recommend you doing that. And conversely, if you're on YouTube but you prefer to use Spotify or any kind of podcast addict or Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or anything like that, go and search us out on there. You will find us, and we really would appreciate you to follow us on those places and subscribe to us. And you show us that you're enjoying the content, and we'll keep putting the content out.
Absolutely. But for now, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.